The midday Lagos heat shimmered, turning the air into a thick, humid blanket. Maro, her brow beaded with sweat, wrestled a large cardboard box out of the back of her uncle's car. It was labeled in her scrawled handwriting, "Books and Other Dreams." The irony wasn't lost on her. Her life, once a neatly packed box, was now a jumble of uncertainties. She had left her old life in Abuja to chase a new professional challenge and a fresh start in the sprawling, chaotic heart of Nigeria. This apartment, on the second floor of a modest block in Suralia, was to be her sanctuary. She locked the box up the staircase, her legs aching with each step. The narrow corridor was a symphony of sounds, the distant chatter of children playing, the rhythmic thud of a pestle on a mortar from a neighboring kitchen, and a faint, melodic strumming of a guitar. She reached her door and fumbled in her pocket for the keys, the heavy box threatening to slip from her grasp. Just as she was about to drop it, a voice, deep and warm as the afternoon sun, cut through her struggle. "Here, let me get that for you." Maro looked up. Standing in the doorway of the apartment directly across from hers was a man with a smile that reached his eyes. He was tall, with a lean frame that suggested an easy athleticism, and skin the color of rich, dark chocolate. He wore a simple t-shirt and shorts, and in his hands were 2 bags of groceries. He effortlessly balanced them on one arm and took the box from her with the other, his touch brief and gentle. "Thank you," she said, her voice a little breathless. "New neighbor?" he asked, a friendly curiosity in his gaze. "Just moved in," she confirmed, gesturing to her cluttered front door. "It's a bit of a mess right now." He chuckled, the sound a low, pleasant rumble. "No worries. My name's Progress." "Maro," she replied, finding herself smiling back. He had a magnetic energy about him, a calmness that contrasted with the bustling world outside. He carried the box into her living room, placing it carefully on the floor, and looked around with an appreciative nod. "Welcome to the building, Maro. I hope you like it here." "I'm sure I will," she said, and meant it. He then excused himself to put away his groceries, leaving Maro to her unpacking. As she sorted through her boxes, she couldn't shake the image of his smile or the sound of his name. Progress. It was such a fitting name for the feeling he'd just given her, the promise of a forward-moving, better day. Over the next few days, their lives began to intertwine in small, organic ways. She'd see him coming and going, often carrying a guitar case or a stack of sheet music. He was a musician, she learned, and his apartment was his creative sanctuary. The faint strumming she'd heard on her first day became a regular, comforting background hum to her own work, a soothing counterpoint to her days of analyzing data and drafting reports. One evening, Maro was struggling to assemble a flat-pack bookshelf, a task that was proving far more complex than advertised. She was sitting amidst a pile of wooden planks and screws, a frustrated sigh escaping her lips. Just then, Progress knocked on her open door. He was holding a bowl of jollof rice, the aroma of which instantly made her stomach growl. "Couldn't help but hear your industrial efforts," he said, a playful glint in his eyes. "Thought you might need a break. My mom sent some jollof." Maro laughed, a genuine, uninhibited sound. "Please, come in. This bookshelf is trying to kill me." He stepped inside, his gaze falling on the scattered parts. "Or a battle of wits. I'm a pro at this. My uncle owned a furniture shop." He put the bowl on her table and, without a word, began to help her. They worked in comfortable silence, their hands moving in sync. He was patient and methodical, while she was a whirlwind of frantic energy. He showed her the correct way to hold a screwdriver, and she showed him the shortcut to finding the right screw. As they worked, they talked. He told her about his music, his passion for storytelling through lyrics, and his dreams of one day playing to a stadium full of people. She, in turn, told him about her job in tech, her love for organizing and her goal of one day leading her own team. They were so different, yet their ambitions resonated with each other. By the time they finished, the bookshelf stood tall and proud in the corner of her room. They sat on her floor, eating the jollof rice, and the conversation flowed easily. It was as if they had known each other for years. Maro found herself opening up to him in a way she hadn't to anyone in a long time. She felt seen, heard, and understood. As the night wound down, a gentle breeze swept through the open window, carrying the scent of rain. Thank you, Progress, she said, looking at the newly assembled bookshelf and then at him. For everything. My pleasure, Maro, he replied softly. His gaze lingered on hers for a moment too long, a silent acknowledgement of the shift in the air between them. The friendship that had blossomed over a few short days was now tinged with a new, exciting kind of promise. It was the first step on a journey she never knew she wanted to take, a quiet, almost imperceptible turn on the path that had just led her home. The shared bowls of jollof rice became a weekly ritual. It was a simple, unspoken agreement that transcended the neighborly pleasantries, a gentle extension of the hand of friendship. Their connection was a slow, steady melody, and they fell into a rhythm that felt both effortless and deeply satisfying. Maro would return from work to find Progress on his doorstep, his guitar in hand, a silent invitation to sit and talk. Their conversations ranged from the mundane, the incessant Lagos traffic, the latest football match, to the profound, their biggest fears, their wildest dreams. They were two disparate halves of a whole, a tech-savvy analyst and a soulful artist, finding common ground in the shared space of their lives. One particularly sweltering evening, as the air hung heavy and humid, Maro sat on the small patio outside her apartment, a cold drink in her hand. The evening lights of Surale began to flicker on, painting the neighborhood in a soft, electric glow. Progress emerged from his apartment, his guitar slung over his shoulder. "Can I play for you?" he asked, his voice low, almost as if he were asking a favor. "I just finished a new piece." Maro's heart did a tiny flutter. It was the same hopeful feeling she had felt when he first carried her box. "Of course. I'd love that." He settled onto the step below her, his fingers already dancing across the fretboard. The notes he produced were raw and melodic, a soulful blend of highlife and a modern, acoustic sound that felt uniquely his. He closed his eyes as he played, lost in the music, and Maro found herself completely captivated. The song was tender and hopeful, a story without words. It spoke of new beginnings, of an unexpected connection blossoming in an unlikely place. When he finished, the last chord lingering in the air, he looked up at her, a vulnerable question in his eyes. "That was beautiful, Progress," she said, genuinely moved. "What's it about?" He hesitated, a faint blush creeping up his neck. "It's about a feeling. The feeling of a new beginning. Of finding a new home in someone." Maro's breath caught. She didn't need him to say more. The song, she realized with a jolt of warmth, was about her. The feeling was a mirror of her own. He had taken her unspoken dreams and turned them into a tangible, beautiful sound. In the days that followed, their bond grew stronger. Maro invited him to her favorite local booker for lunch, a small eatery where the aroma of arsen and suya filled the air. She found herself sharing details of her work, a world of spreadsheets and market analysis that was completely foreign to him. Yet, he listened with an intensity that made her feel like the most interesting person in the world. He asked clarifying questions, offering insights from his own creative perspective that were surprisingly astute. "It's like building a song," he said, thoughtfully chewing a piece of suya. "You have a structure, a verse, a chorus, and a bridge. Your data is the chorus, it's the core of the song. Your analysis is the bridge, connecting different parts to create a new story." Maro stared at him, impressed. "That's actually a perfect analogy." Later that week, a torrential rainstorm hit Lagos, the sky opening up and washing the city clean. The power flickered out, plunging the neighborhood into darkness save for the glow of mobile phones and the occasional flash of lightning. Maro was about to settle in with a book and a torch when a soft knock sounded on her door. It was Progress, holding a lit lantern and a deck of cards. "Board games in the dark?" he asked, a mischievous grin on his face. "Or do you prefer to listen to the rain?" They spent the evening in her apartment, the lantern casting a warm, flickering light on their faces. They played a Nigerian card game, what, their laughter echoing in the quiet darkness. The rain drummed a relentless rhythm against the window panes. At one point, as she reached to pick up a card, her fingers brushed against his. The contact was brief, but a jolt of electricity shot through her. They both looked up, their eyes meeting in the soft, golden light. Time seemed to suspend itself. She saw a flicker of the same yearning she felt within herself reflected in his gaze. Later, as they were saying goodnight at their doors, a shared silence hung between them, pregnant with unspoken words. He reached out and gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was feather-light, but it sent shivers down her spine. "Good night, Maro," he whispered, his voice a little husky. "Good night, Progress," she managed to reply, her own voice barely a whisper. They stood there for a long moment, the air thick with anticipation. It was a dance of unspoken feelings, a silent question hanging between them. As he finally turned and entered his apartment, Maro leaned against her own door, her heart pounding a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. She was falling for him. It was a realization that didn't come with a shock, but with a deep, comforting sense of inevitability. She didn't want to just listen to his music, she wanted to be a part of his melody. And she was fairly certain he felt the same way. The next chapter of their story was just a breath away. The air between them was no longer just the humid, thick atmosphere of Lagos, it was charged with the memory of his touch. Maro found herself replaying the moment at her door, the way his fingers had gently tucked her hair, the hushed sound of her name on his lips. She felt a delightful, terrifying thrill run through her veins. He was no longer just the friendly musician from across the hall, he was an object of a simmering, undeniable crush. The next morning, an uncharacteristic shyness settled over her. She almost stayed in, inventing an excuse to avoid seeing him. But the prospect of missing his warm smile, his easy laughter, was too much to bear. She emerged from her apartment, clutching her work bag, her heart a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. He was there, as if by habit, leaning against his doorframe, a relaxed smile on his face. "Morning, neighbor," he greeted, his voice as smooth as a river stone. "Morning, Progress," she replied, a little too quickly. She noticed his eyes held a knowing glint, a mirror of her own unspoken thoughts. He held up a takeout coffee cup. "I was just getting an extra one. Thought you might need it." He passed her the cup, their fingers brushing for a fraction of a second, and the familiar jolt shot through her. The simple gesture felt like an enormous statement. It was more than a coffee, it was a continuation of the conversation they hadn't finished the night before. That evening, he proposed a simple outing. "The city's got a new art gallery. My friend's doing a show there. Wanna check it out?" Maro's heart leaped. "I'd love that." They took a boat ride through the labyrinthine streets of Lagos, the city's kinetic energy a vibrant backdrop to their quiet anticipation. They talked about his music and her work, but the conversation had a new texture, a subtle undercurrent of something more intimate. They were no longer two friends sharing stories, they were two people on the precipice of something new. The art gallery was a minimalist space, all white walls and carefully curated light. Progress guided her through the exhibition, his hand hovering near the small of her back. He had a musician's eye for composition and a storyteller's appreciation for narrative, pointing out details in the paintings that Maro would have otherwise missed. He was perceptive and passionate, and she found herself falling for him more deeply with every painting they looked at. After the gallery, they decided to walk along the Lekki-Ikoyi Link Bridge. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, the bridge came alive with the soft hum of evening traffic and the gentle whispers of the breeze. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, just taking in the view, the vast expanse of the city unfolding before them. Finally, Maro broke the silence. "You know, Progress," she began, her voice soft. "That song you played for me, it was beautiful. It made me feel seen." He stopped walking and turned to face her, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders. His gaze was intense and direct, and for a moment, all the noise of the city faded away. "Good. Because that's what you do for me, Maro. You see me. Not just Progress the musician, but me. And that's a new feeling." He leaned in closer, his breath warm against her cheek. Maro's heart was a hummingbird trapped in her chest, beating a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Every single instinct told her to lean in, to close the minuscule distance between them. She wanted to feel his lips on hers more than she had ever wanted anything. He was looking at her lips, then back up to her eyes, seeking permission. She didn't need to say a word. She closed her eyes, a silent invitation. His lips met hers, tentatively at first, a soft exploration. It was a kiss that tasted of quiet promises and a shared future. It was slow and tender, a gentle, patient unfolding of all the unspoken feelings that had been building between them. Maro melted into the kiss, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart. She had never felt so safe, so completely and utterly at home. The kiss deepened, a wave of passion washing over the tender foundation. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him, and she responded by winding her arms around his neck, her fingers tangling in the soft curls at the nape of his neck. The world around them disappeared, there was only the sound of their breathing and the intoxicating feel of their lips moving together. The kiss was no longer a question, it was an emphatic, thrilling answer. It was everything she had dreamed of and more. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless, their foreheads resting against each other. The city lights twinkled like a million tiny stars, a witness to their shared moment. "I've wanted to do that since the day I helped you with that box," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Maro's heart swelled with a happiness so profound it felt like it might burst. "Me too." The walk back to their apartment was a giddy blur. They held hands, their fingers intertwined, a small, yet monumental gesture that solidified everything. The comfortable silence of before was replaced with a new kind of quiet, one filled with the hum of shared electricity. When they reached their building, they stood at her door, hesitant to end the night. He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles, his eyes never leaving hers. "Maro," he said, his voice a gentle caress. "This is a new song for us. And it's going to be a beautiful one." He leaned in for one more kiss, a lingering, tender moment that sealed their pact. It wasn't a goodnight kiss, it was a promise. As he finally retreated to his apartment, a broad smile on his face, Maro stood at her door, a hand pressed to her lips. She was no longer just the ambitious girl from Abuja, living in Lagos. She was a woman in love, and the next chapter of her life, full of romantic thrilling moments, was just beginning. And it had all started with a simple cardboard box and a smile from her neighbor, Progress. The first days after their kiss on the bridge were a blur of giddy smiles and unspoken understanding. The barrier that had existed between them, a fragile wall of polite neighborliness, had crumbled, replaced by a sense of shared intimacy. Their daily greetings were no longer just a wave and a hello, but a lingering glance, a quick, knowing squeeze of the hand, a promise of more time together. Maro felt a lightness she hadn't known was possible. The stress of her job melted away the moment she saw him, and the solitude of her apartment became a space she couldn't wait to share with him. One evening, Progress knocked on her door, a wide grin on his face. "Okay, so I've been thinking," he began, "since we're a team now, what do you say we try making something other than my mom's jollof? A proper meal, from scratch. I've got all the ingredients for some Ijegusi soup." Maro's eyes lit up. The offer was more than just a date, it was an invitation into his world, a step towards building a shared space. "Deal," she said, pulling him inside. His apartment was a reflection of his soul, warm, a little bit cluttered, and filled with the gentle, constant presence of his music. A guitar lay on the couch, and a few song lyrics were pinned haphazardly to a corkboard. The kitchen was small but functional. As they began to walk, a comfortable rhythm settled over them. Maro was in charge of chopping the vegetables, her movements precise and quick. Progress handled the main dish, stirring the thick, bubbling soup, his movements as fluid and confident as his guitar playing. They moved around each other in the small space, their bodies brushing, a new, exhilarating kind of intimacy. They talked as they walked, and the conversation flowed deeper than it ever had before. Maro told him about the pressure she felt at work to always be a step ahead, the quiet fear of not being good enough. He listened without judgment, his hand coming to rest on her back in a comforting circle. "That's how it is with music sometimes," he confessed. "You write something you think is brilliant, and then you play it for someone, and you see their face, and you just know it's not working. You have to start again. But the part of you that created it is still there. That's the part you love." He smiled at her. "The part you love will always be there, Maro. You just have to trust it." She felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. He understood. He saw her, not just as a successful career woman, but as someone with doubts and fears. After the meal was done, and the plates were cleared, they sat on his couch. The hum of the city outside was a gentle lullaby, and the warm glow of a single lamp created a soft, golden cocoon around them. Progress began to strum his guitar, the melody a quiet, soulful hum. He didn't play a full song, just a series of chords that seemed to tell a story all on their own. Maro leaned her head on his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. The scent of his cologne, a clean, woody fragrance, filled her senses. She felt safe, utterly and completely at peace. She looked up at him, her eyes searching his. The playful glint was there, but it was softened by a deep, tender affection. He put the guitar down, his attention now fully on her. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing the line of her cheekbones. His touch was a gentle promise. He leaned in and kissed her, and this kiss was different from the first. It wasn't a question or an answer. It was a statement. It was slow and deliberate, a careful exploration of a new and exciting territory. It spoke of all the words they hadn't said, of all the feelings they had just begun to share. The kiss deepened, a wave of passion washing over the tenderness. Her hands found their way to the nape of his neck, her fingers tangling in the soft, curly hair. His hands moved from her face to her waist, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them. The intimacy was breathtaking, a mix of explosive passion and quiet, unwavering security. She felt the steady beat of his heart against her chest, a rhythm she knew she could fall in love with. As the night wore on, the air between them grew thick with a beautiful, intoxicating desire. They had crossed the threshold from friendship to love, and now they were on the verge of crossing another. It wasn't a frantic rush, it was a slow, deliberate unfolding. Every touch, every kiss, every whisper was a careful step into a deeper connection. This was a new beginning in every sense of the word. A shared history was being written, and with every passing moment, Maro felt a growing sense of belonging. She was home. And home was not a place, but a person, her progress. The world outside Progress's apartment faded into a soft, distant hum. The only light in the room came from a single, low-wattage lamp, casting a warm, golden glow over the space. It was a cocoon of intimacy, a sanctuary where all the unspoken feelings of the past weeks could finally find their full expression. They were still on the couch, their bodies so close there was no distinction between where one ended and the other began. Maro's heart thrummed a rhythm she had never felt before, a frantic beat that was both thrilling and deeply calming. His hands, which had so gently held her face, now roamed her back, pulling her even closer. His kisses, a beautiful mix of tenderness and passion, sent shivers down her spine. The scent of his skin and the clean, woody fragrance of his cologne filled her senses, and she felt a sense of belonging so profound it stole her breath. She had never felt so seen. Every touch, every kiss, was a language he was speaking fluently, a narrative of desire and respect. He moved with a careful, deliberate grace, his hands tracing the curves of her body as if rediscovering a treasured map. She responded with an equal, uninhibited passion, her fingers tangling in his hair, her body arching into his. This wasn't a rush, it was a slow, beautiful unfurling, a meticulous dance of discovery. He broke the kiss for a moment, his forehead resting against hers, both of them breathing hard. "Maro," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You are incredible." Her own response was a soft gasp. "You too, Progress. You too." Their bodies, now a single unit, moved towards the bedroom, a silent, mutual understanding guiding their steps. The clothes they wore became a gentle hindrance, something to be shared and forgotten. The soft fabric of the bedsheets welcomed them, a cool contrast to the heat of their skin. Under the dim, warm light, their passion escalated from a simmer to a rolling boil. His kisses were no longer just on her lips, but on her neck, her shoulders, her collarbone. Her hands explored the contours of his muscles, feeling the strength and the beautiful vulnerability of him. He was a song, a complex melody she was just beginning to learn, and she was an eager student. The moments that followed were a beautiful, thrilling symphony of touch and feeling. Their bodies fit together in a way that felt both destined and deeply, physically satisfying. It was a release, a culmination of all the anticipation and unspoken desire. But it was also more than that. It was a beautiful conversation, a story of two people who had found each other, who had built a foundation of trust and friendship, and who were now expressing their love in its most intimate form. It was a thrilling and passionate experience, a moment of profound joy and connection that transcended the physical. Afterwards, they lay tangled in the sheets, their breathing slowly returning to a normal rhythm. The only sound in the room was the gentle hum of the city outside and the occasional low whisper of the wind against the window. Maro rested her head on his chest, her hands played over his heart, feeling its slow, steady beat. She felt a deep sense of peace, a quiet joy that settled over her like a comforting blanket. He kissed the top of her head, his arm wrapped tightly around her. "That was perfect," he murmured, his voice a sleepy, contented rumble. Maro smiled into his chest. She knew he wasn't just talking about the physical act. He was talking about the journey they had taken, the beautiful, exhilarating climb that had brought them to this moment. They had fallen in love in the most honest, organic way, and now they had taken a new step together, building a foundation not just on shared dreams, but on shared, intimate, and unforgettable moments. This wasn't just a chapter, it was the first page of a new book, a story of two hearts that had found their home. The morning light filtered through the blinds of Progress's apartment, painting the room in stripes of gold and shadow. It was a Saturday, a day without the usual frantic pace of Lagos, a day meant for quiet, shared moments. Maro was in the small kitchen, humming softly to a song on the radio as she sliced yams for breakfast. The aroma of frying eggs and sizzling oil filled the air, a scent that had, over the past few months, come to define her weekends. Progress emerged from the bedroom, his hair still tousled from sleep, a look of utter contentment on his face. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "That smells incredible," he murmured, his voice a low, morning rumble. Maro leaned back into him, a happy sigh escaping her lips. "This is what my weekends have been missing all this time," she said, her voice laced with genuine joy. Their love had matured from a thrilling, dizzying crush into a steady, comforting rhythm. The passionate fire of the first few weeks was still there, but it was now tempered with the easy familiarity of a shared life. They knew each other's little quirks, her need for a perfectly organized spice rack, his tendency to forget his keys on the counter. They had built a world for themselves, one composed of lazy mornings, late-night talks about their dreams, and the kind of profound connection that only comes from true intimacy. Later, as they sat on the floor, their plates balanced on their laps, the conversation took a more serious, yet joyful, turn. Maro gestured to a small box of her things she had brought over and hadn't yet taken back. "You know, my lease is up in a few months." Progress put his plate down, his eyes locking with hers, and a wide, certain smile spread across his face. "Good. Because I was going to ask if you were tired of carrying all those little boxes back and forth." He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Maro, I don't want you to have to pack your things and leave every morning. I want to wake up with you here. Every day. Let's do this properly." A rush of emotion, a wave of pure happiness, washed over her. It wasn't a surprise, it was the natural progression of everything they had been building. It was an unspoken truth they had both been holding on to, waiting for the right moment to set it free. "Yes," she said, her voice a little choked up. "Yes, Progress. I want to do this." They spent the rest of the day talking, planning, and dreaming. They talked about combining her minimalist style with his more eclectic, musical one. They debated the pros and cons of a king-sized bed, discussed which wall would be best for her bookshelf, and where he could set up his new sound system without driving her crazy. Their conversation wasn't just about furniture, it was a beautiful, ongoing negotiation of their lives, a gentle merging of two separate worlds into one. That evening, as the sun began to set, painting the Lagos sky in shades of deep orange and soft violet, they went for a walk to a small, new apartment block under construction. It was an unofficial ritual, a way to visualize a potential future. They stood outside the fence, holding hands, looking up at the skeletal frame of the building. "Imagine," Maro said, her voice a soft whisper. "Our home. Our kitchen. Our first living room together." Progress squeezed her hand. "It doesn't matter where we are, Maro. As long as we're together." He then reached into his bag and pulled out a small notepad. I wrote a new song for us. It's a sequel to the first one I played for you. He began to strum his guitar, and this time, there were words. The melody was familiar, but the tempo was faster, more vibrant, filled with a new kind of joy. His voice, warm and sincere, told a story of a chance encounter that became a lifelong journey. He sang about finding a true home not in a place, but in the heart of another. The lyrics were simple, honest, and utterly beautiful. When he finished, he put his guitar down and looked at her, his eyes filled with a love that felt as vast as the sky above them. Maro, this isn't a new beginning, he said, his voice a gentle caress. It's a new chapter in a story that was already perfect. And I want to write every single one of them with you. He leaned in and kissed her, a kiss that was a promise, a celebration, and a deep, soul-shaking confirmation of all their shared dreams. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Maro felt a sense of peace that surpassed anything she had ever known. She had left her old life to find something new, and in the sprawling, chaotic heart of Lagos, she had found her progress, her home, her everything. Their love story was just beginning, and it was going to be the most thrilling and beautiful of all. The end.
This is Progressive Folktale. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this very captivating story. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so as to be notified whenever we upload a new video. Join our membership so you will always be the first to get notified whenever we make any uploads. And we've uploaded more love stories specially created for our membership subscribers only. Check the description box to join now so you don't miss out. Furthermore, please support us by using the super thanks icon in between remix and download icon down below. Lastly, rate this story on a scale of 1 to 10. And don't forget to tell me where you're watching this video from. I am going to see you in another video.